Hi people. I came across a thread on one of the groups that I'm active on social media. Basically, the thread was about disparaging terms that bring down reasoned, mature debate. Which sounds like a reasonable proposition. It sounds like okay that there are terms that are used that way. Some of the terms cited, and I quote here, are things like snowflake, gammon, and so on. Terms that are very much used as part of the culture wars. But what the guy included in his OP as one of these so-called terms of derision is woke, and that's what I want to focus on this video. This idea that woke is somehow an insult. Now, I personally have been very critical of woke as an ideology, but that's the point. It's an ideology. And I'm going to quote here from the Wikipedia article on woke, just so that we know what we're talking about. Woke is an English adjective meaning alert to racial prejudice and discrimination that originated in African American vernacular English. Beginning in the 2010s, it came to encompass a broader awareness of social inequalities such as sexism and has also been used as shorthand for American left ideas involving identity politics and social justice, such as the notion of white privilege and slavery reparations for African Americans. The phrase "stay woke" has emerged in African American vernacular English, that's abbreviated to AAVE, by the 1930s, so that's even further back than I thought. In some contexts, referring to an awareness of the social and political issues affecting African Americans. The phrase was uttered in a recording by Lead Belly and later by Erica Badu. Following the shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, the phrase was popularized by Black Lives Matter activists seeking to raise awareness about police shootings of African Americans. Um, After seeing use on Black Twitter, the term woke became an internet meme and was increasingly used by white people, often to signal their support for BLM, which some commentators have criticized as cultural appropriation. Mainly associated with the millennial generation, the term spread internationally and was added to the Oxford English Dictionary in 2017. So, this idea that it's somehow an insult on par with something like snowflake or gammon is absurd and it's disingenuous. Woke is an ideology. Now, I'll briefly outline why I'm so critical of it, at least how it has become, not necessarily its origins. Like so many things that start off well and with good intentions, it morphs into something else. For example, feminism is about the equality of women and girls. Now, what reasonable person is going to be against that? But many of us who are critical of third wave Western feminism are so because of its double standards, its misandry, and a range of other things. Um, Ideologies evolve over time and they are judged on the actions and the statements of their adherents. So I just find it a little bit ironic that left-leaning people are now getting offended by the term woke when they were the very people who coined it in the first place. It's absurd. This idea that it's some sort of right-wing invention is just not true. It is true that there will be some right-wing people who use it as a catch-all to criticize any left-leaning idea, and I'm really going to have to do something with the color in this video. That's I've just noticed that. But yeah, it can be used as a catch-all, which is a bit lazy. Like every time a left-wing position is uttered, then oh, that's woke. Um, so yeah, I get that, but the notion that the word is invalid and it is somehow an insult in of itself is very dishonest, and I think they know it's dishonest because it's been called out now. The reason I'm critical of it as an ideology um, is because I think it is just profoundly divisive. I think that the sort of ideas that woke people promote, things like white privilege, are very, very flawed as concepts. I mean, I could make a whole video on any one of these things, but just to take white privilege as an example, it's the idea that all white people, particularly in the United States, are inherently privileged Now that's a problem because privilege denotes special perks, right? It totally ignores white poverty. It totally lumps white people together. It's basically saying that a white guy on Skid Row in Los Angeles is the same as Elon Musk. Um, and it ignores, to use Left's own term, lived experience of individuals. I think it's utterly obnoxious. I think it is racist. You wouldn't get away with a generalizing term for any other race. So why should it be okay for white people? If the question mark is that white people haven't had the same extent of historic prejudice, although you could point to Irish immigrants who did. But even so, if that's the issue, then okay, talk about that. But don't use this lazy catch-all term. It's just the sheer hypocrisy of wokeism that I have a problem with. This idea of, but we're only looking out for compassion. We're only trying to get justice. We're only trying to make things equal. Yet the very same people have no problem engaging in bullying tactics. An example of this is the way trans activists bully women, and some cases resort to threats. Cancel culture is more a domain of the left. Now, it's not unique to the left. The right isn't immune from this. There are areas where the right can get censorious, but I would argue that it is more a domain of the left. Um, but all in all, the idea that woke is an insult, it is disingenuous. It's not. If you choose to take it as an insult because you are woke and you don't like being criticized, that's fine. But it's not an insult in of itself. In fact, the very fact that it was entered into the Oxford English Dictionary, shows it is now part of our vernacular, whether people like it or not. Um, the thing is with terms like snowflake and gammon is they were basically invented purely as insults. Snowflake, for example, was the idea that deaf-leaning people, indeed woke people, are too sensitive, hence a snowflake melting easily. And it obviously has been used disparagingly. Gammon, by the same logic, it's this idea, particularly in British English, of usually middle-aged white men. The typical stereotype would be that they would be Daily Mail readers, Brexit voters with strong views on issues like immigration, and they would see themselves as very patriotic. That's a perception of a gammon, so-called, because when they get angry, they supposedly look like a piece of gammon meat. So both terms are insulting, snowflake and gammon. They're insulting terms that were invented to be insulting, but woke isn't. And I just think it's a bit hypocritical to push the term saying stay woke and then get insulted when people use the term as a point of criticism. The way I see it is no different than saying I dislike socialism or I dislike conservatism or I dislike feminism or whatever other ideology or political idea that people criticize. Um, Politics is adversarial by nature, right? So with that comes positions, and with that comes terminologies and ideologies. This idea that you can't use those terms because somehow that ruins debate is just disingenuous nonsense. Um, of course, when a debate just descends to the gutter and it just becomes mudslinging, then it's not going to get anywhere. I try to withdraw from that when it happens. For example, I know if I feel very strongly about something, you know, I don't want to lose my temper and just end up insulting the other person because it won't achieve anything. Although sometimes I find their positions intolerable, they might find mine intolerable. But you cannot obviously tell other people how to think. Um, and that also is a line about cancel culture. You can say, I think you're full of it. I think this position is nonsense, etc., etc. I think in a free society, people have to have the right um, to be offensive, quite frankly. But no ideology is above scrutiny. So when woke people push terms like white privilege, they can't say, oh, but it doesn't mean that. They have to accept that for many people it is insulting and it is divisive, and therefore it's going to be challenged and scrutinized. Um, or feminists who say, oh, well, you don't really know the dictionary meaning of feminism. Yes, I do. Equality for women and girls. That's what it means. That doesn't mean I can't say, well, you have feminists who are showing a misandric attitude to the Depp Heard case, or whatever the case may be, or conservatives who seem to think that if anyone criticizes the military, for example, or police, or other people in uniform, they're somehow being unpatriotic or like communists. It's no ideology is above criticism, none. And honestly, when I think about things like this is why I'm pleased to be a centrist because I see the nonsense on both sides. And the thing about identifying with the center is you know that it can be a lonely position because it would be a lot easier to be tribal. It would be a lot easier to align yourself with one camp over the other. But you believe in what you believe in the end of the day. I'm very critical of woke ideology, but I'm also critical of the way some right wingers think. Um, and that's all there is to it. I mean, I could be tribal and be in one camp and just constantly toe the line and fly the flag for that side, but that would be easy and it wouldn't be honest. It wouldn't be honest to my own convictions. So all I can do is say what I believe in.